Abject poverty in rural areas and high unemployment are some of the leading factors behind the rise in homelessness in KwaZulu-Natal. That's all according to community-based organizations, iCare and the Dennis Hurley Centre that work directly with children and adults living on the streets. They say the homeless population on the city's streets has tripled in the last 4 years and have raised concerns about a new influx of people at risk of homelessness in the new year. Dennis Hurley Centre Director Dr. Raymond Perrier joins us now to discuss this. Dr. Perrier, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. The city streets have resulted in the population tripling in the last 4 years. I mean, that's quite an incredible, revelation. I mean, it really shows that this is, there's more to this problem. What have you found? What are your findings around the reasons behind this increase?
Well, it would be an incredible statistic if it were true.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure where you got it from, but the rate of homelessness in Durban has not tripled in the last 4 years. It has increased. We reckon it's increased by about 50%. So that means about 6,000 people either living rough or living in shelters in central Durban. And the reasons for that increase are the same as the reasons for the underlying level of homelessness. That is economic reasons. Most people in Durban and in most of our cities are homeless because they're young men who've moved from rural areas and from small towns, moved to the cities looking for work. They don't find work, and that's why they end up on the streets. And that economic problem then becomes a social problem because of all of the issues related to homelessness. So it certainly has increased, but it hasn't increased by threefold. That's a very bogus statistic, sorry.
Okay, fair enough. So with this increase, what would you say the family dynamics point to? What are the findings around the setup in terms of family dynamics that has really drawn and pushed these young people out on the streets?
I think that the family dynamic is an economic one. We're often talking about young men who've come from impoverished rural and peri-urban families where often there isn't a breadwinner, the family is surviving on grants. So up until the age of 18, the young man, of course, is bringing home a grant. As soon as he turns 18, he still has a healthy appetite, but is no longer an asset to the family. And that's why the family would encourage him to move to the city, to look for work, and hopefully make some money and send some money back. There are some cases where there has been rejection by the family, some cases where the individual's been alienated from the family, but often it's much more innocuous than that. It is that desire on the part of the young person to help the family by making some money and being able to send it home. But sadly, our cities can't absorb the number of young people who are coming to our cities looking for work.
So how do we remedy the situation? I mean, you speak about the social aspects on one end, but they interlink to the economic aspect. Where are the solutions?
Absolutely. So the fundamental solution is an economic solution. We need an economy which produces jobs for people with the level of education that most young people are coming out of school with, which unfortunately isn't always very high, and opportunities for people to make money in our cities without too much red tape, without too much getting in the way. Because unfortunately, if people can't make money honestly, then they're tempted to resort to less honest ways of making a living and surviving. And that obviously then creates all kinds of knock-on problems for the individual and for society at large.
As a community-based organization, what is your approach to homelessness? How are you managing it and taking people in? What is the balance that you're sort of trying to get to? Because the numbers may have not tripled, but they are certainly increasing.
Oh, absolutely. So the key is to work with homeless people. So I think there is a temptation on the part of a number of arms of government, particularly, I'm afraid, eThekwini here in Durban, to treat homeless people as a problem to be solved. Our approach is to recognize that homeless people can often be a solution to their own problem. They might need something as simple as just getting an ID because they lost their ID when they were raided by the police and their goods were stolen. To help them sort out their documents. They maybe don't have their matric certificate or the other qualifications which they've earned and they haven't got the documentation for it. Sometimes it's as simple as helping people connect with services that are available, but unfortunately have been designed to only be accessible to somebody with a smartphone. So if you're living on the streets, you're pretty unlikely to have a smartphone. You probably haven't got a data connection. So if you come into the Dennis Hurley Centre, we can help you connect with those services and see what you're entitled to. So sometimes it's very simple stuff. Often it's more complex. Often it is helping people address issues of addiction. It's helping people address basic health issues, which the rest of us would be able to turn to a GP for solutions. But homeless people can rarely access primary health care. So that's why we have a clinic at the Dennis Hurley Centre, seeing 2,000 patients a month, helping them with primary health care, helping them get ARVs if they're HIV positive, get on TB medication. So these are all really basic needs, but if those aren't met, then it's impossible for somebody to look for work. It's impossible for somebody to to hold down a job.
In 2023, it was estimated that about 18.2 million South Africans lived in extreme poverty. It shows that it's a national problem. It's not unique to just KZN. What kind of approach do you think government should be taking here? I know you've mentioned the state of the economy, but in terms of other aspects, in terms of approach, where should government be looking? Where should officials be looking to decrease these numbers of homeless people? Because we are seeing more in other provinces as well.
Absolutely. And as you rightly point out, the level of underlying poverty is huge. And in that regard, the number of homeless people, however many thousands there are in our city, is a relatively small problem in relation to the overall population. I think in some ways, homeless people play a very important role in our society because they remind us of the huge economic inequalities. Every time we drive through a city, often through the most prosperous areas, and we see guys begging at robots, we see guys going through the bins, scavenging for rubbish, it should be a prick to our consciences, a reminder that we are in the most unequal society on earth and that inequality has increased over the last 30 years. So what should government be doing? Government should be taking that seriously. Government should be looking at strategies which deal with the mass of the poor and not retreating behind fancy words about elaborate IT solutions and all kinds of complicated things, which will help a small number of people, but actually not help the majority of people who want to work but can't get work which is suitable for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Let's leave our conversation there, speaking there to Dr. Dennis, talking to Dr. Raymond Perrier of the Dennis Hurley Centre, who's the director there, about homelessness.